Hello, everybody. Welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League in about 15 days. My name's Suj.
And my name is James.
It's ticking. Everyone's getting excited. Planet FPL is back. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. But each day that creeps along is one day closer to FPL returning, Jays.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's obviously not the only league that is restarting in a couple of weeks' time. We now know, obviously, that the Championship is restarting as well. And that's part of the focus of today's People's Poll podcast.
Indeed, it is. Any more thoughts on football after yesterday's podcast, or it is the same? Let's crack on and make it happen.
No, I feel the same. I think it would just take government intervention now would be the only thing that would stop it. I think it's on track. I think if you dive deeper, it feels like the planning of the Premier League is not quite in the place. We shouldn't be surprised of the efficiency that was shown in Germany with the Bundesliga. There are certain things that are not quite right. For example, no referees have been tested yet. There are certain things that are not quite right, but I think we'll get there.
Well, we talked about how much more efficient the Germans are than us already, haven't we?
So, they are, right?
Yeah.
People's Poll, 3 topics were put up.
Tell me.
And they were involving the 3 sides currently in the Championship relegation zone. Barnsley are bottom, but have shown at certain stages this season they are capable of putting a few back-to-back wins together. They've been having a bit of a behind-the-scenes whinge about certain finances going on at other clubs, such as Sheffield Wednesday, and are already stating that basically, with or without the completion of the Championship, they will be appealing if they get relegated because of the finance of others, particularly, I imagine, should they finish 22nd. The team in 22nd currently is Charlton Athletic, who, my goodness, there's no club I'm worried about more than them from a financial predicament. And Lee Bowyer said in an interview on TalkSport yesterday that 3 of his players, which include his star striker, are refusing to play again. I forget the name of the lad who's been scoring the goals from, but basically he's already privately set up for a life-changing transfer. So Lee Bowyer put it yesterday, and he is petrified of getting injured. They also have basically half the squad is about to go out of contract as well, and it's a little bit unknown in terms of whether they're going to carry on or not. And when you factor in the business model problems at Charlton, that is a crisis. It really is a crisis. Although they're closest to being out, I can't see them staying up.
Can you imagine that happening? Say Cristiano Ronaldo pretty much knew he was moving to Real Madrid in the summer. That was a life-changing move for him at the time. 10 games out from the end of the season, he says to Sir Alex or whoever, I'm not playing for you guys anymore just in case I get injured before I move to Real Madrid. It doesn't sit right with me that that's what has happened there at Charlton with.
I think we can compare life-changing being, yes, moving from England to Spain and moving from Manchester United for Real Madrid as, yes, life-changing. But for your man at Charlton, we're talking about career-changing, right?
Yeah,
we don't know.
The stakes are bigger.
Somebody said, look, there's a contract for you on 50 grand a year when a new football season starts. And in which case, your eyes must start going. And he said to Lee Bowyer, like, I want to play, but I cannot. It's a bad situation. I think that's one to come back to, actually. I forget the lad's name, but he's their talisman. He's been scoring all the goals, basically.
He has. So the winner of the poll?
Luton Town, backed by Bricky, I think, and his Twitter following. Won this Twitter poll. Luton Town is a...
I've got a few other things that Bricky can back with his Twitter followers as well.
Oh, yeah, go on.
Us in the FCA Awards, Football Content Awards, but we'll worry about that at the end. So,
yeah. Luton Town is a fascinating story. They were actually the first to do a little bit of a brief history on them. They were the first club in the South that ever actually turned professional. And if anything, that sums up what might have been the future of Luton Town Football Club. Within a couple of years, they removed that professionalism and didn't go professional again until 20 years later, basically in the 1920s. In the late 50s, they reached the FA Cup final, and then immediately afterwards dropped basically from top division to 4th division. Then had a very good spell from the late 60s to the early 80s when they gained promotion very late to the top division, what would now be the Premier League, the 1st division. They spent 10 years in the top flight, which included winning the Football League Cup, beating Arsenal 3-2 in the 1988 final. Went down in 92, the year before the Premier League was formed. And then kind of dived in and about between Championship, League One, etc. In 2006, they finished 10th in the Championship, and 3 years later found themselves in the National League. Such was the demise of the problems financially. They got relegated to League One, had a 10-point deduction in that division, got thrown down, and then ended up finishing bottom of League Two in 2009 because they got hit with a 30 point deduction for going into administration and previous financial irregularities. Then spent 5 years in the National League. Finally came back after, I think it was 3 playoffs they failed to get through from the National League, a tier that they'd never been at. They're way too big for that level.
Yep.
A few years about in League Two.
And they've won a trophy more recently than my lot have won a trophy, let's be honest.
Well, yeah, and ironically, even in that crisis of the 10-point deduction of the League One year, they beat Scunthorpe United in the LDV or whatever it was called trophy final at Wembley. Following promotion League Two, they only lost 6 games in League One last year, going on to win the title, which was in itself not without its drama as the manager walked out halfway through the season.
Yep.
And they are currently 23rd in the Championship, but have not been on the worst run at all, actually. They've won, I think it's 3 of the last 6. And only lost 1 of those 6. So they were actually in a spell where they was on a half-decent run. Hull were 21st. They'd made up 10 points on Hull over the last 6 game weeks and are now only 6 points behind Hull. And a few others, Wigan, Middlesbrough, Huddersfield and Stoke are only a further point ahead of that. So now feel like actually from being dead and buried, they actually probably feel like they've got half a shot when it returns. And they've been, since the EFL announcement of the Championship returning, there's been quite a few clubs, notably QPR, who are not really in position to be worrying about anything, who've caused a massive stink up about returning. Luton's message is very much, we have to get back and play football, and we have to survive in this league because it is potentially a financial catastrophe to drop out of it.
Correct. Now, the 6-point gap with 9 games to play is not a big deal in my opinion. I think it's like if I saw that and we were coming back to football, I would honestly feel like actually, you know what, there's an opportunity here to catch that up. So it's not that they're coming back really, really adrift. I think they should come back with a distinct opportunity that they can catch any of those teams 6 or 7 points ahead of them. You talked about the momentum that they built up recently with those 3 wins and only 1 defeat in the last 6. Despite that good form and despite those good results, see you later, manager, we're bringing back Nathan Jones. Why do you think it was a case of moving away from the old manager because they didn't like him, or they were just, is it that ex feeling? You know, when you're dating a girl, but you still always have one eye on your ex, just checking her Instagram out or whatever they're doing.
I think Gary Sweet, who's the CEO or chief executive, is it?
Yeah, same nonsense. Yeah,
all that shit. And Nathan Jones, who's now returned following his abysmal period at Stoke, I think it's quite clear they fucking hate each other. Well, Gary Sweet still hates him. I mean, he's hiding it very well. I mean, he's basically said in statements, look, this guy is the right person to save us. But to take a small journey back to that, obviously Graham Jones, who was in charge, which was his, they're not related, the 2 Joneses, by the way. He had been following Roberto Martinez around as assistant manager at Swansea, at Everton, and actually went with Martinez to the Belgium national side, resigned from that position, taking up a brief position when Darren Moore was given the job at West Bromwich Albion. And then obviously came into play for the Luton role when Mick Harford had seen over the second half of last season when Nathan Jones walked out to go to Stoke. Graham Jones got this job. It hadn't been going great, let's be honest. They're in the relegation zone. But the results pre-lockdown weren't the worst. So when the news broke a couple of weeks into lockdown that they'd sacked Graham Jones and basically blamed it on the pandemic, saying that they needed to make financial cuts, that's when as well alarm bells really started to ring here on the financial side. But I think now that Nathan Jones is back in the job, it feels like they just took the opportunity here to line up to get him back. That's how it feels to me from the outside. When they sacked Graham Jones, they said, nobody apply, forget about it till we know what's happening of football restart. And I think it's fair to say that if football wasn't going to return this year, then Luton Town were not going to have a football manager until we had a return. But I think Mick Harford had supposedly said to Gary Sweet, look, he's the man, build your bridges, because it was quite harsh when he walked out to go to Stoke. It didn't end well. It wasn't a mutual agreement. Mick Harford pushed Sweet into calling Nathan Jones back to say, get him back in, get him saved, basically.
I think there's a few fans as well that have got the needle with Nathan Jones for leaving them in the lurch.
Very mixed.
You could tell from Gary Sweet's statement, the CEO statement, where he was asking the fans to put the past behind them, also back the board in their decision. It was very much the board has decided that we're going to bring him back. It wasn't a case of I'm backing my man. It was very much this is a group decision, and we need group compliance and everybody to jump on board with this here. It does seem a little bit funny. You've got Nathan Jones saying he didn't feel any additional pressure coming back to the job that he is coming back to. Should we talk about the finances first, or should we talk about Nathan Jones? They're two different.
Can just either way, whichever you want to do it. Just one point is obviously with no fans, that split mood in the stadium is obviously not going to be in effect.
It's not relevant,
like it would be at certain other places. Perhaps say like when George Graham went to Spurs and fans were like, "What's this?" You're not going to get any of that. I mean, the fact that it ended badly shouldn't also necessarily take away from the fact he'd done an incredible job to get Luton into the position they were playing, but then he fell over so badly on his arse at Stoke. Yeah, let's talk about Nathan Jones first.
His record at Luton was really good. I mean, when he left in January, they'd just gone on a run. I think they were unbeaten in 16 at the time, 33 points out of 39 that they'd picked up in the league, sitting very pretty. And obviously they went on and won League One even after he had left. The foundations had been set there that they were going to go on and conquer. Even in the 1.5 seasons prior, where he'd brought them up from League Two as well, their record is really good. I was really surprised looking at it. 170 games he was in charge. They only lost 37 out of 170 games. They won well over half of those games.
Yeah,
nearly 90 games won, scoring 300 plus goals in 170 games. It's more than a goal and a half almost a game. So it's a very, very, coming up to nearly 2 goals a game. It's a very good record for somebody. I think if he was able to put that, what would you call it, stubbornness against defeat, like a bit of solidity back into the team, I would say they've got a very, very good chance of surviving. And I think if they do survive and he does pull it out of the bag, people will forget the past very quickly.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, that said, you go from the positive of the Luton version of what he'd done to obviously get them into that position when they were second actually in League One before Mick Harford took them on to the title when he left to go to Stoke. But I mean, Stoke fans, I asked our friend Jamie FPL Potter for his opinion as well. And the theme that came back in terms of system-wise is he will only play a diamond. Back four with fullbacks who bong on. So think a little bit like Jack Stacey, who's gone on now to Bournemouth, who's obviously missed a chunk of this season through injury. So he wants to play back four with fullbacks bonging on and a diamond system in midfield, and he will not move from that system. And what worked so well at Luton obviously really didn't translate at Stoke. He won, I think, 6 games at Stoke out of 38. I mean, wow.
That's really not good.
Stoke never had a Premier League season where they only won 6 games out of 38. So, and they're one of those who are hovering, obviously, in danger as well. Stoke are 17th. Obviously, the bottom 3 of 24 go down, but Stoke are only 3 points clear of Charlton. It's a 7-point buffer over Luton. Actually, Stoke have gone through the last 4 unbeaten as well and have improved a little bit since Jones left.
There is this right manager, right time.
I think so. I don't know if this is that case. I mean, I'm generally of the opinion that managers shouldn't go back I mean, as much if you take my example with Pochettino, if he came back tomorrow, I'd be happy, but I'd also be a little bit nervous in terms of what he'd done previously could get completely forgotten if it goes really wrong,
Mm.
right? And there's always that danger. I mean, if you take Howard Kendall at Everton, obviously did amazing things in the 80s. It wasn't quite the same on his second and third stints, right?
No.
Not that it killed his legacy at all, because he was part of probably Everton's greatest ever side in the 80s. But yeah, generally don't go back. Is probably the advice. But if he saves them, like what you said, then I think it will get forgotten, won't it?
Very, very quickly. And in the meantime, we've got Gary Sweet coming out and talking about financial Armageddon potentially. And I think there's some truth in what he's saying. I mean, he's talking about the bigger picture of the championship, but then he's talking about the specifics of Luton Town as well. I mean, we don't need to labour on the point of the difference between League One and the Championship in terms of revenue and TV rights and all of this kind of stuff. It's very clear that is the case. But if you're talking about, I'm not sure how long he's been the CEO there, but he's talking about how it's going to be really, really financial ruin for the club if they go down. For a club that only got promoted last year and has spent a significant amount of time in League Two, League One, and it moved up through the leagues in the last 4 or 5 years, I really feel like I want to ask, like, why have you put yourself in a financial position and overstretched yourself that relegation is going to? But then why is he saying? So is he just?
I think it's
crying?
more. He made a statement in December, sort of saying that the Championship should have a salary cap, because the difference between Championship and League One was huge. But then, of course, it's going to be. I mean, we're in a position now where, and we don't know this yet, but assuming the Championship does restart on the 20th of June, it looks like a little bit like the Premier League, that every single game might be televised. So there's huge exposure for the league, whereas you go to League One and you may get, I don't know, 10 to 15 games get shown live a season, and not even every side will get covered. Whereas in the Championship, you've got 2 to 3 games covered live every week. So even just the television money is massive. Then factor in the gate stuff, the sponsorship stuff, the commercial stuff. So huge.
Second most watched league in the world, right? The Championship.
It's certainly in the top 5. I don't know about second, but yeah, in terms of attendances in stadiums, it's definitely in the top 5. Obviously, interesting you mentioned stadium, because Luton's is a crippling mess.
They got a new one on the way.
They have got a new one coming on the way. It's an interesting story on that as well, because when we had FPL Badger on, our Norwich correspondent, and we started getting a bit drunk during Planet FPL 24, he basically sort of agreed that Luton Town is the worst stadium in the country. It's like no other on earth, in the fact that you basically go into someone's back garden to go into the away end. But they have got planning permission was passed through late last year to build this new stadium, which ironically, unlike many of the new stadiums, is actually going to be in the town centre. He's actually going to be, I think it's 3/4 of a mile closer to the town centre than what the current one is. And I've been to Kenilworth Road. I can say that, you know, it's a walk from the main train station, a fairly long walk, but you can certainly do it. So they're staying very much within that community as part of what they want to do. Gary Sweet came into the football club around about the time of the administration problems and the 30-point hit. He was actually part of one of the supporters trusts, who are now they've got some sort of part ownership in the football club. So yeah, he's been down into that National League level, come back up through to Championship level. I think the point that he was trying to make back in December was that for a club like Luton at the moment, with a stadium that's falling apart and can only get sort of 10,000 in it, to try and compete against the other Championship clubs can't happen. And part of the problem, his belief was, in 17-18, Championship clubs between them had a total net debt of 307 million for a calendar year. And his point was like, this isn't right. That's not how we want to work. But basically, the only way to be successful in the Championship is to almost cause yourself debt to chase the glory of the Premier League that will then reverse that debt.
That's the ultimate problem, isn't it, James? The prize at the end of the Championship is so big. Yes. The Premier League it's that gamble, right? Would you take that risk just for the potential riches of being back in the Premier League? And so many clubs do it. I think it is very easy for me as an outsider to say, cut your cloth accordingly and don't overspend. But I don't have that carrot had dangling in front of me, which is the Premier League, which is just ridiculous. I mean, we talked about the 100 odd million that's the parachute payments alone, just even if you do get relegated. On the flip side, you see the likes of Burnley or what have you, they got relegated. They came straight back up, but they never had that financial issue because they stayed within their means. Now you've got to have the right players and the right manager and the right structure within the club to be able to bounce back like that. It's one of the reasons why, say, West Ham get relegated. I don't think we'd have more than 2 seasons in the Championship because we have that depth to be able to buy our way out of it. So if we go down, we go down. I wouldn't expect to be down there for more than a season or two. But for other clubs, it could be if a Bournemouth got relegated, for example. I mean, they've got a rich owner, but he's in the hundreds of millions, not the billions. It could be a long time. So I do see where he's coming from. And I definitely agree that controlling the amount that clubs spend should be something that they consider, or how much debt they can get into.
The thing is with Luton as well, and it's part because of the stadium. The story is a little bit bigger than just a football team, right? They're basically going to overhaul the town. Basically, it's going to create loads of jobs, etc. Not they're building a community somewhere else, on a paradise, something. I forget the name of it, but it's not where the stadium site is. It's a different site in Luton that's going to create offices, jobs, etc. Like a new mall, basically.
Yep.
Now, if they go down to League One and suddenly can't build this stadium, which nobody suggested that they can't, and I think it's the main priority for that football club is probably to get on with that stadium. But if they can't, that's not an effect just on a football team. That's an effect on a whole town, right?
Which is why we've talked so often about football clubs aren't businesses. As much as they are, they're not. They have so much else going on that they do need a certain different kind of category, status, whatever it may be, charitable, whatever. Yeah, it's going to be difficult. And Ricky, I'm so sorry, but Luton is not the most advanced, developed little town. It does need investment, and it does need.
Hold on, I spent 3 years there at university. You're absolutely right.
Enough said. Yeah. But it has potential. It does have potential.
Well, geographically, in terms of where it is, right? 20 minutes on a fast train to
London. Stone's throw from London. Yeah. I've got friends that live there. My mate Josh lives there and whatever. He won't speak ill of it at all. But it could do with some investment and regeneration for sure.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So the story is more than a football club surviving in the Championship. And we don't know. They could go down. I suspect financially, actually, they'll be all right. Because I think a little bit like what you were saying, it's only, was it 2014 they come up from the National League? So they haven't suddenly, and they're not rich owners anyway, right? So it's not like they've been splunging what they've got. They've been very well managed by Nathan Jones to get them into that position on the pitch. I mean, to go back to, say, the Burnley example you give, you're absolutely right in terms of the way the football clubs run and the importance of Sean Dyche can't be understated. But eventually, Burnley Football Club, the way they're operating, will get relegated. Now, that might be in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. But eventually, if they carry on the way they are, it's an absolute certainty. That's life. And if Luton Town don't progress with things like the stadium, at this moment, you go into Kenilworth Road, you can't look in there and think that's the Championship football club, right? You look at all the other clubs that are down there, right? Stoke, new stadium. Huddersfield, new stadium. Middlesbrough, new stadium. Wigan, new stadium. Hull, new stadium. Those are the clubs directly above them outside the relegation zone have all moved into new stadiums inside the last 25 years. That's what Luton need to go and do, right? If they want to regularly punch with these guys and more.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I honestly, I haven't watched enough Luton Town or Championship football to say that this is an informed opinion. But looking at the stats and the momentum that goes with them, I honestly feel like that new manager bounce could be what gets them through. And if Nathan Jones is that right manager club fit, over the next couple of years, I could see them rising. It wouldn't surprise me if they rose up and challenged to get back in the Premier League and became a decent side. I mean, Nathan Jones is a young manager, right? I think he's only 45, something along those lines. So it's nice to see a young British, well, he's Welsh, isn't he? So British manager doing bits.
I think it was absolutely a no-brainer for him to take the job back as well, because, by the way, he's lucky to get it back following that period at Stoke. There was no other Championship side was going to be offering him another job, mate, because it was that much of a disaster, really. If you look at Luton's fixtures coming up now, if they go on the schedule that they were due to be postponed in, Preston, Swansea, Leeds would be the next three. Tough. I'm going to rule out home and away at the moment as not so important, but they're three of the better sides in this division. The final six, however, Reading, Barnsley, Huddersfield, QPR, Hull and Blackburn, they can get out of this.
I agree with you. They really can get out of this.
I think they can.
And
it would be a remarkable story if they did so. I worry for our friend Rob Pick and Barnsley. I feel like there's too much of this. I'm chattering my hands, basically, as in, like, we're already putting up the wall of excuses a little bit, and some of them are very valid excuses from financial stuff and that. And I just feel like Charlton, I can't see how to get out of it, even though they're closest.
Yeah, I think is it Lyle Taylor is the player that you're thinking of as a striker?
That's your guy,
yeah, who's not going to play. I mean, take the top goal scorer out of any side, and they'll struggle.
And Hull, the one thing that does give the three below them the shine light is particularly Hull, I think. We've had a disastrous run, 1 point over the last six. We don't really know, obviously, when the league starts again, if form is going to be a thing or not. But they are nosediving to be in a position that, I mean, Luton can reach them now. They were, like 16 points off them only like 6 game weeks ago, and now it's only 6 points. So that Hull are the ones to be worried, and they're another one financially. If you think of all the stuff that happened up there with Alam, isn't it, the chairman, who wanted to change the name to Hull Tigers
and stuff.
And yeah, I don't think that's in the best financial position either, really. It's whoever drops out of that league, he's going to suffer, I think, more than any other of the clubs across the football pyramid in this country. It's just such a drop-off.
Indeed it is, James. Indeed it is. So if you are a Luton Town fan, our best wishes go out to you in this relegation battle.
And to all of them.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's no favouritism here. Just fingers crossed that Nathan Jones can turn it around for you guys. And if you've got any other information and comments, do chuck it in on the Twitter post that James puts out with the podcast, or on the YouTube comments as well. It will be interesting to know, because we don't obviously know as much as maybe some local fans like Ricky and so on that do. So there you go. A little rundown at Luton Town, James.
Nice job. Personally, for me, having spent a bit of time there, I've got a little bit of affection for them. I mean, I don't really care, but I've got a little bit of affection to them in the sense that, yeah, I would like them to get out of it.
It'll be interesting to see. James, do you want to tell everybody what other content we've got coming up this week, and I'll give them a rundown on our public service announcements.
You do that. Quiz tomorrow. Premier League debuts is the theme. Doesn't necessarily mean Premier League players' debuts, but it does mean Premier League debuts. Chatman FPL Wednesday night. Thursday, Clash of the Correspondents is back. Adam Hopcroft, FPL Blade, will be talking Villa and Sheffield United ahead of the double game week and the FPL restart. I'll stream Friday afternoon. We're expecting, by the way, Suj, fixture schedule to be confirmed, I believe, in the next 24 hours or so, which would be very important for Sky players. And we will return with our Sky podcast in our Wednesday slots as of next week.
Lovely, jubbly, James. Thank you very much for that. Just on a side note, we'll probably discuss it later in the week. I had an email from West Ham today confirming that they've given me club cash for the season tickets for the rest of the season. So now I've got all of 3 adults, 2 kids, basically my brothers and his wives and all of that are all in under my one account. So they give me 450 quid's worth of club cash, which can be used nowhere other than at the club. So I'm not sure whether I'm going to buy about 10 hot dogs, because that's probably all I can afford for 450 quid, or nothing else.
Can you not hold it for tickets?
Yeah, I think you can for next season.
I mean, Spurs, I haven't decided yet, but Spurs last week emailed us similar. They have said, though, that you can have the refund if you want it.
Yeah, we haven't had that email.
I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting that from Spurs. Spurs have said you can hold the money there and it will go towards your future tickets, or we'll give it back to you. My thoughts probably are that
Just hold it.
It's not like I'm not going to go, is it? Yeah, hold it.
Exactly. I'm the same as that. And like, I think my brother might not renew his wife, so just I can use that money against mine as well. It's not like it has to be on each individual ticket.
Spurs also, because listen, there's always negative publicity around Spurs, and I heard there might be some more financial publicity around Spurs finances coming in the next few days, which I'm not allowed to talk about, by the way. Legitimately, I'm not allowed to talk about. But I think they've said as well that money could be donated to like the Tottenham Hotspur Foundation, local
nice.
as well, and stuff like that. Like they'll set it up if that's what fans wanted to do as well.
Interesting to see.
I don't suppose any fans are going, just knock off the 350 quid to the food bank. But you never know. Some people might feel they don't need that money at the moment. True. They probably would rather that charities had it than Tottenham. So
true, James. Just all the listeners, if you are listening, a couple of bits and pieces. Firstly, James and I are very proud to be finalists for the Best Fantasy Football Podcast in the Football Content Awards, which is in November. However, you only have until the 18th of June to vote for us. You can either vote via Twitter or on their website. If you check James's pin tweet, I'm assuming your pin tweet's going to have the link to, or the bio would have a link to it. Maybe we should do that, James. Get everyone to vote.
It's got the link to yesterday's podcast.
We need awards.
Although I tell you what I have started doing is I have put the link for the awards voting into the description of all the podcasts.
Trust me, if you search Football Content Awards, you'll be able to find out how you can vote for us in that. If you are a regular listener to the show or the hundreds of shows that we've put out, just that little bit of support will help us in so many ways, not just because of the ego boost and the trophy, but just the recognition will help us grow Planet FPL to what we really want it to be, a really strong media platform for everybody who plays fantasy football. On top of that, we do have Patreon as well, which has some really good tiers and some really good features. So you can check that out at patreon.com/Planet FPL. We've just launched our Champman FPL mini league. We also have a very active Slack channel that's been live for about 3 or 4 days now, and everybody's jumping on with all sorts of conversations.
That channel is mental already.
It is. It's really good fun as well, though. It's not just FPL, but people supporting each other. We've got a lot of American fans, and we know what the difficulties they're having over there. Everybody's jumping on board with all sorts. So it's about building a Planet FPL community of our regular listeners and fans and followers, and that's what's happening on the Slack channel, as well as prizes, mini leagues, and all that. Just head over to Patreon if you are interested in any way. It starts as cheap as £3 a month. So there you go. And last but not least, subscribe wherever you're getting your podcast or watching on YouTube, and hit the notification bell so that you know when our content goes live, because it's not like we put out one show a week. It's there thick and fast.
Yeah, too much apparently, so I've heard.
Oh, well, size matters, James. That's all I'm saying. And on that note...
So does quality, not just quantity, and we want to keep providing the quality. That's all I've got to say.
Agreed. Guys, thanks for tuning in. All importantly, be safe and ciao for now.
Be nice to each other, everybody. Cue music, man, ciao.